Hello, Rob here from Christchurch City Libraries. Today I want to tell you about this little device here. It's called a BBC microbit and it's a programmable microprocessor. So it's like a small computer. It's the sort of thing you'd find inside your household appliances like fridges and cookers and washing machines to control them. So this is programmable, so that means you can decide what it does. So it has inputs and outputs. So some of the inputs on here are these buttons. So you can decide what happens when you press each of these buttons. It also has sensors on it, like a temperature sensor and a movement sensor that detects that it's being moved. So you can use those inputs to decide how the microbit behaves and what it does. It also has outputs. So the main output on here is this little array of little lights. There's 25 of them in 5 rows of 5, and you can program those lights to come on or go off. So you can see here we've got the number 4 on the screen at the moment. So some of those lights are lit up in the shape of the number 4 and some of them are switched off. You can also attach things to this part of the microbit down here at the bottom to give you extra inputs and outputs, but we're not going to be doing that today. We're going to keep it simple, and I'm going to show you how to program this microbit to do some simple tasks just using the built-in sensors, the buttons and the display. So I've programmed this microbit to do a few different things. So firstly, when I press the A button, it shows me the current temperature in the room. It's a bit colder out here, so I'm going to measure the temperature with the microbit out here. So I'll press the A button. Oh yeah, it's definitely colder. When I press the B button, I've programmed the microbit to tell me how many times I've pressed the B button. In other words, it's a counter. So each time I press it, the number goes up. 4, 5, 6, etc. and it'll just keep adding more and more numbers. So to set that to 0, I've programmed it so that when I press both buttons together, it resets the counter to 0. And the last thing I've done is I programmed this microbit so that when I shake it, it gives me a random number between 1 and 6. So really it's like a 6-sided dice. There we go, and each time we do that we get a different random number. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can program a microbit to do those things on the computer. Now you probably don't have one of these at home, but that's okay because on the microbit website there's a simulator that will show you exactly how your program would work if it was on a microbit. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is find the microbit website. So if we type microbit make code into Google and then choose this option here, we're at the right web page. So now if we click on new project, we can start a new project. We can call that anything we want. I'll call that Rob's program. Okay, so now we're ready to start. So we don't need these blocks here, so to get rid of those we can just drag them across to the left hand side. So what we have here is a workspace, and we're going to be dragging blocks across from these menus into this workspace to build up our program. If you've used Scratch before, this should seem familiar. So the first thing we want to do is program the microbit to display the temperature when we press the A button. So we're going to need something from the input menu, which is this first block here on A button pressed. So we'll drag that across. And now we need to put something inside this. What we need is in the basic menu, and it's show number, because we want to show a number because the temperature is a number. So now we need to put something into this space here that tells us what the temperature is. So we'll find that in the input menu. Down here it says temperature, so we drag that across into that space. Notice the block and the space are both the same shape, so that gives you a clue as to what you can put where. Simple. That's our whole program. So let's see if it works. So over here on the left we have a simulator that shows us what would happen if we ran this program on a microbit. So if we press the A button, it shows us the temperature. Brilliant, it's worked. Now remember, this is a simulation, so that's not the actual temperature in the room here. But we can change the simulated temperature, so if we put that down, when we press the A button, it should show us the lower temperature. Great. So that's the first part of our program written. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is program the B button as a counter. So if we go back to the input menu here and drag this across, we now need to change the A to B in this drop-down menu. Okay, so again we're going to want to show a number. This time it's the count. So we take show number from here and we put it into here. Now what are we going to put in here? Well, this is where things get complicated. So what we need to do is to make a new variable. So you can think of a variable as a little box that you put a piece of information into. So to make a new variable, we're going to go to here, the variables menu, and we're going to click on make a variable, and we're going to call that, well, we can call it anything we like, but I'm going to call it count. Okay. So what I've made is a little box with count written on it, and into that box we can put numbers. So the box always starts out with a 0 in it. Now when we press the B button, we'll have pressed it once. So we want that variable to be 1. So we need another block from the variables menu, which is this one, change count by 1. So in other words, when we press the B button, the number inside our box called count increases by 1. And then we want to show that number. We don't want to show the number 0, we want to show whatever number is in our box. So we have to go back to variables, take this count block and put it inside here where that 0 is. Okay, so now when we press button B, it should increase the number that's in the box called count, the count variable, by 1, and then show us the current value of that variable, whatever number is in that box. So let's try it. We press button B, we pressed it once and it tells us the number is 1. If we press it again, it adds 1 to the one that was already in there and it shows us the number 2. And if we press it again, we get 3, 4, 5, 6, and we can just keep going. And if we get to numbers larger than the display, then they flash across left to right. So let's code the microbit so that when we press buttons A and B together, it resets this number to 0. We need to go to input again. We take this again for a third time, but this time we change the A to A and B. Then we go to the variables menu, and then we take this block that says set count to 0 and we put it in there. So let's try that out on the simulator. So if we keep adding numbers, counting up, and we decide we want to reset that to 0, we need to press both buttons together. And now that's set to 0. But the trouble is we can't see that that's 0. So actually what we need to do is put another block like this in here. There's a shortcut for doing that. If we right click on there and then click duplicate, it will just give us a copy of that command, which we can drop into here. So let's try that again. 1, 2, 3. Now let's press both buttons together and it goes back to 0, and then if I press B again, it goes up to 1, 2, 3 again. So now we've programmed button B as a counter and button A and B together to reset that counter to 0. Okay, so the third and final thing I want to do is program the microbit so that when we shake it, it gives us a random number between 1 and 6, so a 6-sided die. Again, we need to go to the input menu, but this time we're going to take this command here on shake. So when we shake it, something's going to happen. And again, we want to show a number. This time it's a number between 1 and 6. So we put show number into there. Now, to put a random number in there, we need to get something from the math menu down here. And what we need is this one here that says pick random. So it's going to pick a random number and show it to us. The last thing we need to do is change these numbers so that it shows us a random number between 1 and 6. Okay, so let's test that in the simulator. So now if we shake, we get a number 1. If we shake again, 4, 6, 5, and so on. So that's it. We've programmed button A to tell us what the temperature is. We've programmed button B. We programmed button B as a counter. Button A and B together to reset the counter. And shaking the microbit gives us a random number between 1 and 6. So now it's over to you. We've learnt about inputs, outputs, variables. We've learnt some of the basics of programming the microbit. So why don't you see what you can come up with? See if you can write a little program. You could try using some of the blocks in the basic menu that we haven't used. All of the blocks we've used have given numbers as the output, but you can actually write text. You can even choose from some pictures, and you can even make your own little pictures. So have a play with that and see what you can come up with. Now when you've written a program, if you want to put it on one of our microbits sometime, you need to download that. So all you need to do is click on the download button in the bottom left hand corner of the screen, and that will save your file to the downloads folder. It will prompt you for a name, so you can give the file whatever name you like. Save that on a USB stick or somewhere that you can bring it into the library one day, and we can show you what your program looks like on a real microbit.